Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our session, How Are Demographic Shifts Impacting Investment Strategies? My name is Maya Hojeij. Before we start with our details and our discussion, we were having a very, very interesting discussion backstage. Wish you were all there with us. Let me welcome my guest speakers, Ken Costa, the chairman of Helios Fairfax Partners, author of the $100 trillion wealth transfer, How the Handover from Boomers to Gen Z will revolutionize
Well done.
capitalism, and Samantha Ricciardi, CEO of Santander Asset Management, in addition to Philippe Oddo, managing partner of Oddo PHF. Welcome, all of you.
Thank you.
We're going to discuss how are demographic shifts impacting investment strategies when we talk about trillions of dollars that are changing hands as baby boomers pass their wealth to the next generation with the potential to alter economic power and influence investment strategies. So before I move on to you, Philippe and Samantha, I will start with Ken, especially given the book that you wrote. I've been reading the book. Very, very interesting insights. Gives us an idea of what's going to happen next. What do you think when this transfer happens? Where is it all going to go?
Well, thank you very much. But the thing to remember is many people think that transfer is something that's going to happen sometime in the future. But it isn't. It's happening right as we speak. If I ask the question as to who is the one that provides most finance to first-time homeowners, pretty well anywhere in the world, certainly in the UK and the US, you might say Barclays Bank or JP Morgan, but the answer is actually BOMAD, the Bank of Mum and Dad. So the Bank of Mum and Dad is already passing wealth to the next generation. And we've never seen before a combination. You might say, well, you know, people die and therefore next generation takes over. But the difference here is that the enormous amount of wealth that is being transferred is itself, and that'll be about $100 trillion on the estimates going forward in the next sort of decade or so. The difference is that it's empowering a generation as never before. And it's empowering them because the wealth is transferring in huge quantities. Technology is enabling them to be able to make investment decisions in digital form much more rapidly than before and giving them real power. Social media is giving them even more power to be able to make judgments on their friends, pull people together, form action groups. And lastly, and most importantly, there's a very important difference in that this generation, the Zennials, as I call them, those who are Gen Z and the millennial group, are the ones who want to see them not only do well, but do good. So they want to see investment in sustainability, equality, justice, and the rest. So that's why this is a very different age, producing some serious challenges to the investment of money.
Philippe, I'll move on to you before, and we'll keep ladies till last, not first, but being a fifth generation family business, and you work in banking, you work in investment as well, but we're talking about transfer of money through generations. As a fifth generation family business, looking forward, how do you look at it, this transfer of wealth?
I look at it in a different way. I think Ken is totally right. The new generation is going to act in a new way compared to the old generation. But I look at it on a different way too, with the gender. Gender, yes. Men are usually, in the couple, the person who is in charge of the wealth. And very often the ladies are more often looking after the budget. True or not true, that's my personal experience. Good or not good, I'm not judging it. And in fact, what we have done, we have launched a ladies' bank. We have proposed to our clients, ladies, to be together. And we talk to them, you have to be in charge. You are rich, or you are going to become rich.
Okay.
And you are going to have money from your parents. So you have different choices. Either you ask your husband to look after your wealth, or you can ask your son to look after your wealth, or you decide yourself to look after your wealth. And then if you have ladies all together, they dare asking questions, and it's very interesting because, in fact, they are raising the good questions. The money is to do what?
Okay.
You know, the money is not there about the money. The money is to finance the school of my kids, the retirement of my life, the next house, and so on and so on. And through this type of targets, then we can formalize a strategy. In other words, it's a question of generation, it's a question of gender, because the ladies are investing a different way than the men. And then I would add maybe another criteria, which is related to geography. When you are in a geography where the birth rate is big, you invest in a certain way. When the birth rate is very low, you have to take that into account in the way you allocate your wealth. If I may go on, Samantha.
Please, Philippe.
I will take the example of China. The Chinese, when they have money, what do? They buy their first apartment. If they have more money, usually they buy a second apartment and they rent it. But when you are a couple, you have already 2 apartments, but your parents on both sides have bought
2
2
apartments,
apartments.
each. Yeah.
So when they pass away, you got 6 apartments. So what are you going to do
One
with the
person
6
will rent.
apartments?
They
And
will
when the
inherit.
population is going down, the price of the rent is going to go down. So if I would be in China, I would not buy for the next 50 years any real estate. As an example, that you have to take into account also the birth rate when you make your asset allocation. So geography, birth rate, gender.
Samantha, where does the money go? In what assets? Which assets? And is it geography, generation, and gender, like Philippe said?
So very interesting. I'll then have to ask Philippe who performs better, the women that are investing or the men. So we'll take that offline. But to your point, and looking at it more from more of a manufacturer of the type of investment solutions, what we're certainly seeing in these new generations is the fact that they're much more interested in sustainability. So we're seeing an important growth in sustainable assets, whether it's impact or just sustainable in terms of really moving more towards a carbon neutral world. But what I would say there, and that's something we were talking about before coming in, is that you see more at a mass affluent private banking type of level. Your retail everyday client will still be more worried about ensuring that they're covering their costs and needs and covering them for inflation. But anyway, sustainability is certainly something that we're seeing. We're certainly seeing much more of an appetite for tech-like solutions. So if you see the amount of people that are now investing in and ETFs is a good measure of where the assets are flowing towards. If you look at how ETFs have grown in the crypto space for the millennials and the Gen Zs, it is more than double what you see for the other generations of the boomers. So you're certainly seeing a lot of interest there. And the last thing I would say is you're certainly seeing a tremendous growth in the appetite for real assets, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's private equity or VC. You're certainly seeing much more appetite for the private markets than you used to in the previous generations.
Ken, when we talk about the real assets, what are the real assets? What is a real asset yesterday? Is it still a real asset today or will be a real asset tomorrow?
Can I'd love to answer that, but before that, can I just come back on a very important trend that is happening in the next generation? And that's what Philippe was saying, is the feminization of finance, that by the end of this decade, at least $10 trillion will be run by corporations which are run by women.
Okay.
And in Africa, as a result of artificial intelligence, one of the great things there is the ability to have voice recognition to enable women to get directly the monies that would normally have gone to the husband, to the woman, to be able to invest or to spend. But on the real asset side of it, yes, there will always continue to be the desire for real assets. But don't forget, these are digital natives. The Zennials, Gen Z and the Millennials are digital. They've grown up and known a digital age. So you will find that digitization will grow, and they will not be afraid of not afraid of artificial intelligence or quantum computing in any way. So cryptocurrencies and all of that a boomer generation like me or a banker would say, oh my goodness, this is anything but currency. They will be going in a very different way. And I think that the markets will begin to adapt to the different investment methods because all of it is going to be on this telephone for your investment decisions. So yes, it will change, more digitalization, and don't write off crypto.
I'll ask the same question to you, Philippe, but also I wanted to ask the question that Samantha asked, who's better? Is it the men or the women when it comes to taking these decisions? And of course, then we'll talk about the assets.
You know...
So, I mean, you have a bank for women. Tell us about it.
Yes. I would say, I'm not saying that men or women are better. Probably women are more consistent and conservative. I would say the spread of performance is probably wider with the man than the woman. That's what I would answer in a few words. But to be totally honest, we never made a competition between men and women.
That's a good idea.
That's a good idea. So what are real assets to you? Do you look at the digitized world and the new assets of the digital world as real assets, something to invest in for the next generation, for the Zillennials, as Ken called them? Zillennials or
Zennials?
Zennials.
Maybe another criteria I would like to take into account. The magnitude of your wealth has a big impact on the proportion of the asset at risk. If you are poor, you don't want to put anything at risk.
No.
If you're rich, you can afford to take risks. And at the end of the day, you want to take risks because you are going to win more. What we have to do is to help mainly the Europeans, because they are invested really much too much in fixed income than in equity, to have the mindset to invest as a pension fund. And then even you are poor, if you know that the savings are for the next 20 to 25 years, you are ready to take more risk. And I think it's key for the wealth and for the better for the whole population and for Europe to, and for the world to help even the poor people to invest more in equity. Then did I answer your question? Your question is, yes, we invite the people to invest more and more in private assets. Do we propose the people to invest more in digital assets? No.
Okay.
Because myself, I think that digital assets are not interesting for the wealth, for the world. You know, because money is to do something. And money has to be invested in real economy. And that's the reason why I definitely think that crypto assets are very volatile, will stay volatile, but will not be seen as a real asset class as asset managers, but we will always provide the service to our clients if they want and decide themselves to invest in crypto assets.
Samantha, do you think they are real assets? Would you recommend them? I mean, if they're not today, who knows if they won't be in 20 or 30 years? We won't be here. 40, maybe I'll be here in 20 or 30 years. But I mean, when the time comes, how do we know they're not real assets? How would you allocate something like that, Samantha?
So I was taking a step back on your question and then something else that Ken mentioned. So what I would say is our responsibility is really to be putting the solutions out there for the clients to decide whether they want to access the digital assets. I personally do believe that things like Bitcoins, for example, are absolutely here to stay and will be here for a very long time. Whether NFTs on art will be something that will be there for the next 20 years, I honestly don't know. So for now, where we're focusing on is much more about let's make accessible things like Bitcoins to our clients and for them to be able to access it. The other thing that I did want to say in terms of like these new generations and private markets is the fact that I think we keep on talking about digital assets, but then there's also the question of accessing private markets digitally. And I think that that's a big change of what we're seeing nowadays is you are able to digitally access private markets, whether it's real estate or private equity or whatever, that before you couldn't unless you were a massive institutional firm that could go and buy real estate directly. So I do think that there is an increasing angle of these new generations being able to access digitally private assets.
So because we don't have a lot of time, I would like to wrap up by giving each one of you an opportunity to answer this question. Wrapping up, how do our priorities change when we move into the next era of the future and when we think of investment? How are we looking at our priorities? What is the most important thing that we need to do?
I think, as I was saying early on, for the next generation, there is a real combination of both doing well at work with a real purpose in what they're doing, particularly in a changing world, but also to do good. And therefore, we have to have a combination that will attract that generation to the investment strategies that we create for them. So to answer Philippe's question about the digital currencies, well, maybe you should have half in gold and half in Bitcoin, hedge your bets. But for that next generation, a new mindset is going to be required. They will want far more involvement in direct investments to be able to influence companies, smaller companies, that we would have to provide through the usual ways in which wealth managers are managing those companies. So I think it's very exciting, but very different.
Well, I mean, they're both providing the option, or even if they don't like it yet, maybe. What do you think? What is the most important thing we need to do moving forward, Philippe?
I think something which will never move. We have to gain the trust of the clients. And to gain the trust of the clients is to bring the things that the clients are able to understand. It's very important to make the transparency. We speak a lot about transparency, but transparency doesn't go with big, letters that people have to sign with very complex reporting. I don't think so. I think, yes, you have to do it. You have to respect the regulation. And the regulation, Europeans are very good and excellent, are producing new regulations and want probably the worldwide leaders in terms of regulations. That's not the way to gain the trust of the clients. The trust of the clients, we will gain them as long as we are able to provide them something they understand. And they are going to understand more and more things thanks to digital.
Samantha, what do you think?
I'm going to go for something that's not groundbreaking, but I think that we all need to face, which is an aging population, and pensions are not going to be enough. And I think that the world, the way we know it, is used to one where the governments always come in and take care of your pension, and those times are over. And I think we all really need to realize that and see how we're going to be helping people save enough for their retirement.
Thank you so much, Samantha, Philippe, and Ken.
Thank you
It was a pleasure having all of you here. We can talk about this for hours and hours, but we'll take it outside since we're
Thank you.
done
Thank you
with the
very
time here.
much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.